All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. This is our second Eco-Lunch and Learn series, which is brought to you through the collaboration of BEST and Bermuda College. And today I'm very pleased to introduce you to Aaron Critchlow, who is our speaker and he's the founder of Bermuda Is Love, which is a community organization whose vision is to create a Bermuda where everyone's basic human needs, including food, clothing, housing, education, healthcare, a healthy environment, and access to justice are met and guaranteed by law. He is an associate attorney at Cox Hallett Wilkinson Limited, a Bermuda law firm in the litigation department. His passions are about human rights, social and environmental justice, and climate activism. So we're very pleased to have him today to talk to us about all of his wonderful campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for having me today. As you mentioned, my name is Aaron Critchlow, founder of Bermuda Is Love. And so today, the basic presentation that I've kind of laid out is briefly about Bermuda Is Love, what we're about, and then talking about why Bermuda needs to recognize the right to a healthy environment. So, can you hear? Can you hear me? All right. Can I make this full screen? Not sure how to make it full screen. Now that works a bit better. That's fine. That's fine. So, as Amy mentioned, Bermuda's Love's mission is to promote collaboration, responsibility, activism, and love for the community. And we do this through advocating for the rights to housing, food, clothing, healthcare, access to justice, and an overall healthy environment. So the whole idea, if I guess I refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have the basic needs at the bottom, and then those are the ones that we need in order to survive. And so for Bermuda's Love, our mission is to create a society where everyone's basic needs are met and guaranteed through law, through individual responsibility, through the community working together to ensure that those basic needs are met. And it's not just, our belief is that once those basic needs are met, then society or people have the opportunity to flourish, to not just survive, but to really experience life for what it is, what it's meant to be. It's about giving every person the opportunity to fulfill and become the best version of themselves. So that's the whole basic idea, principle, philosophy, I guess, behind it. And a brief history about Bermuda's Love. So my name is Aaron. I founded Bermuda's Love back in 2020. During the summer, I was in law school, and then I came back in Bermuda. I guess not really searching for a passion, but I guess thinking about ways that I can really make a difference and change society to the way that I believe that it should be ultimately. And so the main principle, the ideas behind Bermuda's Love was the first to build community. So we created the various events that we do, as you may have, but you know already, some of you, with the trash cleanups, blood drives, clothing drives, free clothing giveaways. And it's expanded to the community gardens, upcycling events, free legal clinics. I'll go through them in a bit, but to just expand and tackle these various basic needs. It didn't start out like that. To be honest, it was first about just getting out in the community and deciding what could we do to really make a difference, and it developed into what it is now. The biggest inspiration for us was actually the Black Panther Party with their various survival programs that they did. So they had free food programs, free health clinics, things like that, free clothing giveaways. And so we based our philosophy, ideology around that in terms of meeting the community where it's at. And then once the community is at, raising awareness about the various problems. So for us, it was trash pollution, climate change, fast fashion, consumerism, homelessness, food security, poverty, inequality, lack of access to healthcare, justice, higher education, etc. So for us, for me, it was bringing all these ideas together in one. Because I didn't see an organization that was doing that in Bermuda. And I felt that all of these issues all related, they all matter to another. And if we're not dealing with them all together, we're kind of just band-aiding the issues. So that's the idea. And then thirdly, I guess is the way it's developed now is to advocate for human rights, is because we believe or we see the challenge in ensuring a better world through systemic change. So it's not just us getting out in the environment, in the community to make a difference, but also advocating for the way the system itself needs to change, because we believe that many of the causes or the problems that we face in Bermuda, in the world, stem from the system of social and economic systems and problems. So that's the whole ideology behind it. So as I mentioned, these are the various 7 pillars that we've kind of discussed. And I guess I should mention that just briefly about the name Bermuda Is Love. So I guess the foundational principle that we believe in is that on one hand, we believe that in ensuring these various basic needs are met, they will allow people to be themselves and flourish in society. However, in order for one to recognize the importance of these, we have to recognize our responsibility as individuals and as a community to providing them to each other. And so that relates to the idea of the foundational principle of Bermuda Is Love is to love one another, for me to recognize yourself, for you to recognize yourself in me to recognize myself in you. And so understand that we're all interconnected in this world, much like all these all various problems are interconnected. We ourselves, individuals, are all interconnected. And we all have to recognize our responsibility to one another to make the world a better place. And so, so the introduction of our advocacy in particular is focused on recommending Bermuda's constitution to be amended to include the various rights that I mentioned. We believe that Bermuda's legal framework may provide a legal pathway for future climate activism, social justice, and overall awareness in relation to the problems that we identify, such as homelessness, such as food insecurity, such as fast fashion, such as lack of available access to healthcare, and various problems like the above. And so here, just for your information, so we tackle housing through volunteering at various charities, to tackle or advocate for the right to food through other initiatives such as volunteering at different food programs. We have our community garden, volunteer with the Breakfast program at Coalition Protects Children. We release various infographics and social media posts. So if you want to stay up to date or learn more about the various things that we do, it's all through our social media. So TikTok, Instagram, the whole Twitter, etc. Carrying on, we have the right to clothing, the free clothing giveaways, upcycling events, clothing swaps. We have the right to health care. So we do blood drive, monthly blood drives, have yoga classes, organize walking clubs, and volunteer with Harmony Birth Services. We also have a scholarship program which we use to advocate for the right to higher education in particular. So far, we've actually awarded around $20,000 of scholarship applications, scholarship awards for various persons right there. And we also advocate for the right to access to justice, which is the free legal advice clinics, which we do every so often on Saturdays. So me professionally, I'm able to provide that. I specialize in civil litigation, so personal injury, landlord and tenant disputes, employment matters, things of that nature. And so now we get to why Bermuda needs to recognize the human right to a healthy environment. I guess first, if everyone have any questions about what I just went through? No? I believe I've talked to a number of you about it. But yeah, so that's our goal, our philosophy, why we do everything that we do. Is not just to provide basic needs, but we see that as a way that we can get to what we really want, and that is essentially a society where everyone is able to do what they want. Everyone is able to be who they want to be. Everyone is able to flourish and achieve the opportunities that they will have. And we believe that right now in society, lots of people are worried about, how they're going to pay their rent, where their food's going to come from, dealing with existential crisis about climate change, various needs that simply are not being met. And we believe that this great economic, in particular, inequality is causing these various problems, and that we need to, as a community, come together and recognize that these basic needs are important, and also come together to ensure and protect them for everyone in society. And so we get to one of the pillars today is the right to a healthy environment. For those that don't know, we have been campaigning for this month, November, around advocating for the right to a healthy environment, making the right to a healthy environment a legal right in Bermuda. And I'll talk briefly about why we believe that that is important. And so for this month, we've had various beach cleanups, trash cleanups. Previously, we've done micro sampling. We have a community garden, as I've discussed. We've had community discussions. I presented at the Youth Climate Summit as well, presented at Earth Hour. And so those are various things that we do as an organization to talk about the human right to a healthy environment. And so today's presentation, we discuss the significance of that right to a healthy environment, its implications or really what I want to focus on is why it's important that we advocate for it, why it's important that individuals see it as relevant, why companies, why governments must do what they can to ensure and protect this right, which I believe can encompass all the various environmental issues that we are dealing with. So since the right to a healthy environment was first mentioned in the Stockholm Declaration in 1972, as a result of various environmental conferences, some 110 countries have already recognized and constitutionally recognized it as a legal right. While its impact varies across the globe, it has created a various powerful safeguard against a rising tide of environmental problems, environmental destructions, such as BP oil companies coming in, different organizations, young people in particular, are able to advocate and use this legal right as a protection against essentially corporate companies coming and destroying their environmental environment. In addition, more than 80%, so with the 110 countries that have already recognized it, more than 80% of UN member states now recognize the right to a healthy, safe, clean, sustainable environment through the constitution's legislation or ratification of other regional human rights treaties. In recent years in particular, this right has been come to the fore of public discussion. So in October 2021, the United Nations actually formally recognized the human right to a healthy environment. This was a significant achievement, as back in 2021, it was on the eve of the UN Climate Conference that's beginning again as well in Dubai this month. It was heralded as a victory for environmental protection and an important step forward for the world's most vulnerable people in particular, who are often inextricably tied to the negative impacts of climate change and environmental destruction. So there are five in particular key components of the right to a healthy environment. So they include: 1, access to clean air and water; 2, safe and healthy living conditions; 3, biodiversity and ecosystem protection; 4, public participation in decision making; and 5, a legal recognition of the human right to a healthy environment. So individuals who have the right to live in areas where the air is free from harmful pollutants and water and safe for consumption is the purpose of the right to a healthy environment. It includes protection from industrial emissions, vehicle pollution, other sources of air and water contamination. It extends to living conditions that promote well-being. This includes protection from environmental hazards such as toxic waste, hazardous substances, unsafe housing conditions. It recognizes the importance of preserving biodiversity and protecting natural ecosystems. It involves preventing activities that lead to deforestation, habitat destruction, and the extinction of plant and animal species. It encourages, as I mentioned, public participation. And essentially, the right gives individuals, all of us as citizens, the right to participate and have a say in various things that we may not agree with happening in our environmental natural landscape. And lastly, it's the recognition through international agreements, through regional treaties, through constitutions of a legal framework, of a legal instrument to affirm the importance of protecting the environment as a means of ensuring the health and well-being of both present and future generations. So I'm sure all of you will know why, I guess, the environment needs to be protected, or why it is relevant to have a right to a healthy environment. But I'm just going to really get into what I believe is the nitty-gritty of it. So there is no bigger existential threat to Bermuda, to the world, than climate change. It threatens our life, our community, threatens Bermuda. We are currently living in a climate crisis, and the actions that we take today will determine the viability of human life in the future and now. Therefore, we must consider the various pathways that we have in our arsenal to protect against climate change. And so we believe that one of them is the right to a healthy environment. We acknowledge that currently the government, Bermuda government, has proposed a single-use plastics ban, has pledged to create a framework to balance and develop sustainability in Bermuda and reach net zero by 2050, to also reach 85% renewable energy by 2035. However, as you are all aware, there are various other concerns involving the environment in Bermuda, such as Balco pollution and its residents around the area. We have the airport waste dump. We have wide-scale trash pollution. We have the Southampton Princess Development Order. We have various instances of climate being affected in Bermuda, and action, in my opinion, has been taken very slowly. So the main reason that we see the availability or the viability of the human right, of a legal right, is that it will provide the coalition that is advocating for the Belco pollution to take their right to a legal, safe environment to the courts and legislate against that. And it would be as simple as the courts evidencing where harm has been felt, because that's what laws or the court systems deal with specifically, is identifying harm and then finding a way to resolve that harm through either actions like injunctions and as well as compensation. And fundamentally, we believe that Bermudians deserve to live in homes that are not polluted. We deserve to have an environment that is not destroyed. We believe to have our lives and health not threatened by pollution or waste. There needs to be greater awareness involving the whole community surrounding the importance of the environment and environmental issues that affect Bermuda and Bermudians. Bermuda Is Love argues that the introduction of a new human right, the right to a healthy environment, can tackle and help alleviate many of these concerns involving the environment in particular. So firstly, it can hold government, as I mentioned, accountable, private companies, organizations, individuals, more accountable for their environmental harm. Secondly, the right can be used as a tool to educate people, especially young people, on the importance of our place in nature. Oftentimes, if we do not believe that something is our right, then we believe that we can do whatever we want with it. And so we believe that education is probably the best tool to prevent harm, in particular environmental destruction, from continuing into the future. So part of the advocacy is both trying to implement the right legislatively as well as educationally. So these are very important discussions that we have involving the community to discuss ways in which we can protect the environment. Because the right to a healthy environment is just one aspect of our ability to tackle climate change, waste, pollution, etc. So why have we focused on the human rights-based approach to the environment? So human rights are basic rights and freedoms that belong to all of us, from birth until we pass. They are inherent to all human beings, regardless of race, sex, nationality, language, religion, and any other status. They are all intrinsic part of who we are. Human rights includes the right to life, liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom from opinion and expression, and a human rights-based approach to climate change or climate action, which recognizes this right, can additionally help protect groups and individuals that are most vulnerable, such as island nations, such as Bermuda, such as women, such as children, such as the poor. So shouldn't then human rights also be applied to the environment and the land and the nature in which we live? The environment has been there long before we have, before us, and it will continue to exist after we are gone. So shouldn't the environment in particular be given a right of its own to exist in of itself, so that it may exist safe from human exploitation, safe from human interference? And I believe that the human rights itself requires the protection of the environment. Environmental protection should be regarded on the same level of importance as all other human interests. that are fundamental to living a dignified human experience, a dignified human life, that is important for equality, for freedom, for justice, for fortune to persist among us all. So human beings are part of nature, and human rights are intertwined within the environment in which we live. Environmental harm interferes with the enjoyment of various human rights, and the exercise of human rights encourages us to protect the environment and to promote sustainable development. Moreover, a clean and healthy environment itself forms the very basis of human life, as are balanced ecosystems, biodiversity, and other elements of nature which people depend on. So the human right to a healthy environment also relates to gardening, as we see here. If we have an environment that is filled with pollutants, toxins, and it threatens the very foundational source of which we are able to sustain ourselves. As well, I guess I can briefly touch on is the impact of single-use plastics and microplastics being found in the environment, and how it's been found in the atmosphere, how it's been found in human blood, how it's been found in human breast milk, but how plastics affect one's fertility rate. And so we see that environment affects all of us. It is part of us, and that essentially we need to be doing more to protect the environment and thereby protect ourselves. So there's an interconnectedness between human health and the environment, and the healthy environment is intricately linked to the health of individuals and communities. And so recognizing this right to a healthy environment is also acknowledging this symbiotic relationship between humans and their surroundings. And one of the foundational things, as I mentioned, with Bermuda Is Love is trying to change hearts and minds. And so with this, it's a tool, or the right to a healthy environment requires us to have a cultural shift in the way we think about nature. Simply being available to use for human use, but rather nature having an intrinsic value, intrinsic right of its own that is mutually beneficial for humans and for nature alike. We believe that nature should not be simply valued or defined by how it may benefit humans, financially in particular, but rather as having value in of itself. The idea being that nature has value regardless of human interaction. So once a person recognizes that the forest has a right of its own, that the ocean has a right to its own, then we can see how our interconnectedness works together. And the much similar to how companies in the corporate world, where companies have the right of their own, and they are therefore protected by this, in particular, to limited liability. And so we agree or advocate for the fact that the environment as well should have a right of its own and should be protected through a sophisticated legal framework. In addition, as I mentioned, all living organisms and ecosystems have a good of their own, is, I guess, one of the main points I would like to stress. Therefore, nature's needs and our interest must always be considered. This is something that everyone should care about because of how the environment affects us. And understanding this intrinsic value of nature helps us to understand that we all have a responsibility. So governments, companies, individuals have a responsibility to protect nature from human exploitation and use. And so in addition, the right to a healthy environment provides the legal pathway to protect the natural world. It is about ensuring justice and equity Oftentimes, as I mentioned, marginalized communities bear the brunt of environmental degradation, facing disproportionate exposure to pollution, to lack of access to essential resources. And so environmental justice itself emphasizes the need to address these disparities and protect vulnerable populations. And so for Bermuda, the introduction of this human right to a healthy environment encourages government to pass stronger environmental laws, as well as allowing the courts to hold violators accountable. And when written into our Constitution, it becomes impossible to ignore, creating an enduring, long-lasting force counteracting the interest against protecting nature. And when applied to the judiciary itself, it can help to provide a safety net to protect against various gaps in already existing laws and creates opportunities for better access to justice. It also has the ability to show and evidence, as I mentioned, harmful effects and issues, and can hold governments, companies, individuals responsible, and gives the opportunities for individuals in Bermuda to stand up and say, yes, I have the right to live without pollution falling on my roof. I have the right to live without having to pick up other people's trash, which I'm personally tired of. Therefore, this in itself, this whole framework creates a pathway for environmental justice, which is intertwined within the concept of healthy environment. And it recognizes that everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, in the development and enforcement of environmental laws and policies, that everyone has the right to a healthy environment. It seeks to address and rectify environmental disparities that disproportionately affect marginalized communities. And as an island nation, in particular Bermuda, we are more vulnerable to climate change, including the various impacts of rising sea levels, of ocean acidification, of increased severity of hurricanes. Therefore, this right gives us as individuals the right to say, no, we should not be threatened with climate change, and that government, Bermuda government, that international governments all have the responsibility to protect us from this harm, and that we have a right to live in a safe, healthy environment. There are various limitations to the right to a healthy environment. So one of the main ones is obviously always enforcement of this right, and litigating is often a barrier for many individuals through cost, through time. I know Best has had challenges with enforcing, advocating for their campaigns and progress addressing various environmental issues in Bermuda. And while the legal right to a healthy environment will make it easier, or will make the pathway a bit more clear, straightforward, the process is still a systemic one, or a problem that will always be met with cost and time, which is why we also advocate for the right to access to justice. But that's a different story. And other limitation is also having the community stand up and say that, yes, this is something that we want. This is something that we feel is important. Implementing it within the Constitution itself is a challenge. But altogether, we believe that in order to get there, we have to have these discussions. We have to have people in our events. We have to have people picking up trash, seeing the problem we face. We have to have people in the garden knowing how to grow their own food. We have to have people involved in their community, specifically today in their natural environment, really living and feeling what it is to be and to live in Bermuda, and how we value that, how we value our oceans, how we value our land, and that we must come together to advocate for saying that this should not just be a simple, I guess, aspect of individuals deciding that should be important, but the system itself should be saying that this is the importance that we give to the environment. So another point is the right to a healthy environment acts as a catalyst for better actions around the community. So it can help reframe, as I mentioned, through education, reframe Bermuda's own mentality towards nature itself, towards our oceans and our beaches, etc., which can further help garner support for the environment and help introduce greater sustainability practices into all aspects of Bermuda life. Therefore, the right acts as a tool for education. This is vitally important as justice itself, environmental justice, means ensuring not just that the environment is, or it fully, it is important as it's not just ensuring, environmental justice is not just about ensuring that violators be held responsible, but is ensuring that the environment is never threatened whatsoever. So we want to exist in a world, an ideal world, where no environmental harm is being ever pursued through the courts, through litigation. We're a world where we all see it as our responsibility to protect nature. And so avoiding the courts in all aspects itself. And so the legal right creates our responsibility on all of us to recognize that as our own moral responsibility as well as our legal responsibility. And so recognizing the right to healthy environment helps frame environmental issues as something people have a right to, rather than just one policy consideration such as pollution, such as trash pollution or waste. It can empower the youth as well to start social justice movements and mobilize the public and further deter potential violators. As one example, as I mentioned, I'm tired of picking up trash. Bermuda's Love, we started doing trash cleanups in 2020. We're doing them almost weekly for about 4 months. Every week we were somewhere in the trees, in the ocean, picking up trash. And I got sick and tired of it, to be honest, because every spot that we would go to would ultimately have trash be found back there, or trash would be back there the next week, the next month, and we'll be doing the same thing over and over. So it became repetitive, which is obviously one of the reasons that we advocate for systemic change so that doesn't happen. But the value, or at least the value that I found in the trash cleanups, was whenever new people came to an event, they would see the problem itself. If you go to many, or if you just drive around the road or just drive around the parks, you may not notice the trash. You may just not notice it. But when you're doing a trash cleanup, when you're actually going out of your way to look for trash, you can see that it's everywhere. Everywhere you look, everywhere you go. When you get to a park, you might not see all the trash. You may see pristine. Even a beach, you may go down and you look, just take a quick look, and it looks good. However, when you get into it, when you go behind the layers, behind the trees, behind the sand, then the trash just piles up. And what happens often in Bermuda is trash will be put on the side of the road, or be littered on the side of the road, and then it'll be covered or blown into the trees, and then the trees will grow, and they'll get layers and layers and layers of trees on top of the trash. And when you go to different places around the island, or to be honest, every place in Bermuda, you'll find layers and layers of trash stacked on top of each other. And I find that disgusting. I find it disgusting to pick up other people's trash. We have found everything that you could possibly imagine. I've found. And so it's a problem, and it's not. And what I like to stress is, while the beach cleanups are one problem with the ocean pollution, however, many places in Bermuda, sorry if I have any pictures. I don't know what I did. I'm sorry. There we go. I was just looking for that. So there's one picture of the various trash cleanups that we do. And so, yeah, so ocean pollution is one aspect of the problem. However, various neighborhoods so this is at Flora Duffy Hill. As you're going down and winding down the road, there's a lot, this is the wine part. And so right here, you have, and on that side as well, you have lots of people who just drive their car or walk down and just throw bottles, they throw trash out their car, out the windows, and let it lie for other people essentially to pick up their trash after that. This is terrible. It is crazy. This is at Somerset Bridge. And so every cleanup that we do now, we get at least 10 full bags of recyclables, 10 full litter, black trash bags. And it is every week we could be out in Bermuda cleaning up the roads. And this, what I wanted to stress is that all this trash is there because of us, because of Bermudians throwing the litter outside, without care in the world for other people in particular. Without care for other people, without care for themselves, without care for the environment itself. This is one video I think it made. Will it play? No, it won't play. It's a PDF. So the next topic is youth empowerment. So while the rights of children are protected in the Convention on Rights of the Child, the rights of future generations are not formally recognized. However, a strong argument in favor of the right to a healthy environment, to the rights of future generations, can be made based on the human rights principle. And so several multilateral environmental agreements state this. So you have the Declaration for the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment, which states that, quote, defending and improving the human environment for present and future generations has become an imperative goal for mankind. So thus, recognizing the human right for a healthy environment can protect both us today and future generations. Because of course, in the aspect of climate change, the worst effects of climate change will not be felt in this generation, but the generations to come. And so what we need to be making is decisions that benefit future generations in particular. And so in making those decisions that benefit us all, we must consult or have the youth, young people fully engaged and participating in the human rights decision making. And they should also be allowed or given the opportunity to apply pressure to their governments, to the companies, to make better climate decisions. And so we need to empower the youth by giving them the tools to make real actionable change. And one of those tools is the right to a healthy environment. I know in 2020, when I first started Bermuda Is Love, there were quite a number of young persons advocating for the right to a healthy environment. You had a woman named Saleha Strange. You had Christy Sanchez, who had started, one was the Future Fridays movement that Greta Thunberg had participated and she brought it to Bermuda. And so every Friday they were marching in solidarity with Greta, as well as advocating for a better environment in Bermuda. And then you also had Christy, who created her own organization called Generation Action. So there are various environmental young people making change and caring about the environment. We have the Youth Climate Summit in particular in Bermuda, where Bermuda Is Love has been benefited or has been thankful to be involved with that. So there's lots of opportunities for the young people to get involved in the environment, involved in caring for the environment. There's lots of action. I think one of the newer comers is a man or boy named Ali Cherry, who's at the younger COP conference this month, as well as other young Bermudians like Zane Sinclair, Will Campbell, Malachi Simons. So there's a big coalition of young people who care for the environment in Bermuda. And Bermuda's Love advocates in order to support that movement, in order for it to grow and further develop. One of them is to allow or advocate for the right to a healthy environment. The young people can challenge their government, challenge other individuals, challenge companies. I know Bermuda's Love, we've approached some companies before in the past to talk about single-use plastics in particular, but we haven't really gotten anywhere. So this legal right would help to enforce or protect the environment, give us another way, another tool in our arsenal to really make a difference, which is preventing or limiting climate change, which is preventing trash from being in our streets and our roads. And so some brief examples of young people taking the right to a healthy environment to the courts involve in Colombia, where young people filed a lawsuit that was based on their own constitutionally recognized right to a healthy environment that was able to end deforestation in a part of the Amazon in Colombia. In addition, in regards to America, we had some young environmentalists in the state of Montana who recognized or who sued their government for the right to a healthy, sued that the state had violated their constitutional right to a healthy environment, and they're able to win. And so Bermuda's Love, we believe that this is not only possible, but is necessary in Bermuda if we are to enforce, the single-use plastics ban, if we are ready to get serious about tackling climate change, if we are going to continue on making efforts in sustainability, if we are to continue down the net zero path. There's lots of Bermuda's still a fledgling state when it comes to environmental action that needs to be done in order to really make a difference in protecting the environment, in particular to climate change. So as I mentioned, we, Bermuda's Love, advocate for the amplification of youth involvement in decision-making processes in a permanent capacity and a regular, consistent capacity, not just optionally or occasionally. Personally, I find that while the environmental space in Bermuda is very friendly to young people, more can be done. I think Bermuda's environmental charities can come together and perhaps really advocate for net zero or see that as their ultimate goal of how we can really come together. Perhaps I'm not part of those conversations. So that is why Bermuda's Love advocates for more young people involvement in these decision-making processes so that we can feel like we have a say, as we deserve a say in what our future looks like. The youth, young people, I'm not young anymore, but the future of our society is based on what young people are how they think, how they act, and young people's decisions will ultimately lead to, I hope, will lead to a better environment for all Bermudians. And one of the big goals or ideas is that Bermuda, while we are a small country, is we can change the world, or we at least can be an example to the world of how sustainable practice should be done on the small island state. of how we are all working together to really confront and tackle these different issues, and how we all care about the environment and do not do anything to basically limit its intrinsic value. So partly some of the responsibilities for governments would include, for the right to a healthy environment, include governments play a pivotal role in upholding this right to a healthy environment. So therefore, it wouldn't just simply be individuals like the young people advocating for a healthy environment, but there will potentially be opportunities for government to actually prosecute companies, individuals, persons who violate this right to a legal right to a healthy environment. And this includes enacting and enforcing environmental laws, regulating industrial practices, and investing in various sustainable development policies that promote conservation, renewable energy, and waste management. Potentially could be used, or individuals could say that government is not doing enough, that it should be, and that they need to be doing more in terms of sustainable development, conservation, renewable energy, and that because we have, or it must be doing this because we have the right to a healthy environment. Right now, in terms of trash pollution, I guess I can mention is, so for example, one major spot of trash pollution is around Tynes Bay, if you can believe it or not. It's around Orange Valley, around Parsons Lane. There's it's a big VZ Street, a big dumping ground for lots of trash. And one of the reasons that the trash continues to be found there or be dumped there is, one, education, and the second is not holding the people that are actually doing it responsible. So the problem is through government legal enforcement. However, if the legal right to a healthy environment were to be implemented, then it would give the opportunity for individuals to actually hold each other accountable. So if I saw that person, jump a fridge or a car and just leave it, then I could take them to court for that, to say that they violated my right to a healthy environment. So that's just one example of how it would act in practice. And so that relates to individual accountability in terms of the right to a healthy environment. So while governments bear the significant responsibility, individuals also play a crucial role in requiring, in ensuring a healthy environment. Sustainable practices, responsible consumption, such as fast fashion, making sure that one does not buy from Shein or from the various fast fashion companies, creates a responsibility for all of us to act and buy ethically. And so the legal right also includes some environmental awareness around essential components of citizen engagement. And so each person's choices contribute to the collective impact on the environment, underscoring the need for a shared commitment to a sustainable future. We all recognize the right to a healthy environment, and we all recognize that the environment has a right of its own. Right. And in terms of global cooperation, as Bermuda does not act in a silo or in isolation from the rest of the world, the challenges posed by environmental degradation are global in nature, and so this requires a collaborative efforts on an international scale. And so countries must work together in addressing climate change, protecting biodiversity, and ensuring sustainable use of resources. And so for Bermuda, one of the many countries, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are about 110 countries that already recognize the right to a healthy environment. There are 80% of the UN member states recognize the right to a healthy environment, while Bermuda is clearly lacking behind in this aspect of recognizing the right to a healthy environment. And perhaps that may be because of our ties to the UK. I'm not too sure on that matter, but I do not think that that should prevent us from legally recognizing the right to a healthy environment and becoming part of this global coalition that is advocating for this right to a healthy environment. So, in conclusion, the right to a healthy environment is not merely a theoretical concept, or should not be just a theoretical concept, but is a cornerstone of human rights action. It is about safeguarding the well-being of individuals so that we can all flourish in society. It is about promoting environmental justice and fostering a sense of responsibility at both the individual, company, and government level. And so as we navigate the complex challenges, climate challenges in particular, of the 21st century, this recognition of and protection of the right to a healthy environment increasingly becomes critical for the prosperity and sustainability of our planet. It is a call to action, or rather this whole campaign that we've done for this month about the right to a healthy environment is a call to action, commitment to leave a legacy of a healthier, more vibrant world for generations to come. And so, how can you make a difference? So besides becoming more conscious of the things that you buy, becoming more ethically conscious of the things that you buy, avoiding various fast fashions, be recycling, using more material, upcycling your clothing. Just being here, I would like to remind you all, is that you are educating yourself about a topic, an important topic that affects us all. And so I urge you all to keep learning, research the right to a healthy environment. This is all done just through my own interest, my own concern or advocacy about how do I make the world a better place. And so this is the path that I've taken. However, there are many various different paths that one can take. And what I always say to people who are curious about how I started or why I started is just to do something. Once you start, you realize that it was much easier than you thought it would be. And also one key aspect is perseverance. So I remember when we first did our free clothing giveaway at Elliott back in 2020. And we had a clothing drive, received all this various clothing. I'm talking about fast fashion and consumerism. However, when we did the free clothing giveaway, almost no one came. And we went with about 50 bags of clothing. And some people came and they were dropping off clothing at the day. So we left with about 60 bags of clothing. So it was very depressing, like really, really depressing. And so other events such as trash cleanups, I remember when we were first doing them, and it's sometimes just be me by myself, or me or just one other person, and it's depressing to feel that no one else seems to care, which is the problem, the biggest problem that I've faced. However, once as I've kept going and pushing through, many of the events nowadays are very well attended. For the free clothing giveaways now are very well attended. We've done giveaways now and had about 80 bags of clothing, had it all go. So this is just an aspect of continuing and persevering. So I believe that one day the right to a healthy environment will be recognized in Bermuda. Hopefully we get there in my lifetime. So I encourage you all to continue this conversation, to talk to your friends and family about the problems that you think are important. It doesn't have to be climate related, but it has to be related around making the world a better place. And the beauty of collaboration is that by working together, we can all bring more problems to light in particular. and that we can bring more heads together to solve these problems. Essentially, when we first started Bermuda's Love, it wasn't what it is now, as I mentioned, and it was mainly focused on really addressing the various socioeconomic problems that I felt were relevant. However, through various talks and continue to talk to people who come to events, just talk to people in public about, oh, Aaron, you should do this, Aaron, you should do that, is helped me enlighten and learn more about ways that we can really make the world a better place. Because ultimately, we are about meeting people's at where they are and ensuring that individuals are able to flourish and become the best version of themselves, about who they want to be in society. And the only way you're able to get that is to talk to people. The only way to get that is to build community just like this, and to get people and educate them on the things that you feel are important. And so our hope, Bermuda's Love's hope for the future is Bermuda's Love, we exist as not just an organization, but we like to think of ourselves as a movement of love, of concern, of respect, of responsibility for each other, for ourselves as a community. And so to have all come together to really make a difference, to achieve a common goal of making the world a better place. So Bermuda's Love, and involves the environment. Essentially, the end goal, I guess, would be creating a Bermuda that is at net zero, eliminating climate change as a threat to human existence. For last month, our campaign was on housing, so ending homelessness. The idea being that every person has a right to a home. Next month, we'll be doing the right to food, the idea that everyone deserves access to food in order to survive. And so these are the various things that concern us, and that we believe should concern you all, but is also coming together to discuss things that you think are important, so that we can all feel that we have a voice, a say in the community, in making the world a better place. And so we advocate in particular for increased social and civic responsibility for every Bermudian, every person living in Bermuda. We all have a responsibility to be making a difference, creating a better Bermuda is everyone's responsibility, is basically the idea. And so we believe in a future where everyone has the access, opportunities, resources to be whoever and whatever they want to be. And in this future, we all have an important role to play in society if we want to create a world that is truly more free, equal, just, and free. And thus to save the world, we all have a duty to love the earth, and more importantly, a duty to love each other. So that's Bermuda's Love. So thank you. Any questions?
Oh, yeah. I think it's a lot of questions. Thank you, Aaron. A lot of food for thought. We are running over time. Does anybody have a quick question, please? Yes?
I'll just ask a quick question. Are you ready to start the path to getting the Constitution changed to get this rights to a healthy environment in place, and then parallel to everything else that you're doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd like to be a part of that.
Well, to be honest, I should say, actually, no, we're not. I think for me in particular, I for the next few months, we're going to be doing various campaigns. So this last month's housing, and this month's, November was healthy environment. Next month's the right to food. January will be the right to clothing. February will be the right to healthcare, and then potentially the right to education and access to justice. So for me, we're still building out the framework, and we're not a registered charity yet, and that is one of our goals to eventually get there. And so once we have everything in place, then I would like to see various individuals responsible for education, for collaboration, for advocacy. And so that's how we're building it. And so right now we're still in the first one was building community. So we're still in that building community stage. And so once we feel that we've gotten to a position where that is where we're at, then that's the next step. But we're always, so for housing, for example, the government.
Sorry, I'm going
Sorry, okay.
Sorry, that's okay. I know you've got lots to say, but we do. Thank you. I think
Oh, yes, eventually.
Thank you.
So, hello, I have two comments and I will try to be really brief. The first is to commend you for uplifting a legal approach, but it is going to be a long, hard road because just with the toughest point, special development order, the Bermuda government actually went against an agreement it had made with the UK to protect the environment, with environmental impact analysis assessments. So the UK would have loved Bermuda to do the right thing because they are responsible on the international stage for what Bermuda does internally, because we're still an overseas territory. But in that regard, you may want to consider joining the overseas territories consultative group, because you would have more people engaged around the world in looking at a legal approach. And the next one, I would like to be really brief, but are you aware that Bermuda actually took a leading role back in 1982 in the environmental scene with Dr. Paola Camarera-Caveco, who is a Bermuda national hero. And if I can briefly tell the story, so you mentioned 72, which was the Stockholm Conference, the international conference, which really began to set the stage for international understanding of environmental issues. 1982 was in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, and that conference was meant to now start to corral ordinary people to do stuff. Every time there's an international conference of the United Nations, big one, there's a parallel conference of non-governmental organizations. So the governments came to the main conference, and about 20,000 people were the non-governmental organizations. You had like 2,000 reporters there. And at that conference, what happens is that those people will then lobby these people on their agenda. They know what they're talking about on Tuesday morning, they talk about it on Monday night, and run over to their governments and lobby them to raise this in the international conference. At the end of this one, the non-governmental conference, they voted a Bermudian, Dr. Paola Camarera-Caveco, to be the person for the next 10 years to actually promote environmental understanding and work in the small island developing states. So the first one he had was a regional conference in 1984 in Barbados, the Caribbean, and then he went around the world for the next 10 years doing that. So it is not far-fetched for Bermuda to think of taking a leading role.
I'm sorry, I have to leave, but I just wanted to ask Aaron, did you see the article about Antigua, Barbuda, and a few other islands are actually taking somebody to court around climate change because they're not going to rely anymore on the COP meeting? They don't believe that they're yielding any results. That's an interesting thing. I'm sorry, I have to go. Thank you very much.
No worries, thank you.
Were there any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. As I said, an awful lot of food for thought. I'm glad that you tied in responsibility and rights, because that is very important if we have our rights. Plenty of ideas for us all there to go away with, and I hope that we will support Aaron and Bermuda Is Love in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.